Everything else will be says. All right, so sentence sense. After actually reading and writing your papers, do you ever take the chance to sit and read the paper out loud to yourself? That's an editing quote. Question to you. Yes, no? Okay, so with papers, what we want to get you towards is actually reading aloud your papers and getting a chance for editing. So when you actually read your papers aloud, you can find the little things that stumble, the little things that you might question, and reading aloud your paper is one of the first editing tools that can help you actually write a very good quality paper. So we want to make sure that as we move forward with your papers, that we're getting a chance to read aloud and we are editing. So what are fragments? Every sentence must have a subject and a verb. Pretty plain and simple basics. What we've talked about with subjects and verbs, obviously subjects, nouns, verbs, action of the sentence. And it must express a full and complete thought. Well, when it comes to a fragment, one of these objects are missing. So it's either missing the subject or it's missing the verb. And a fragment is a word group that lacks a subject or verb and it does not express a full, complete thought. We call those fragments. So thinking about fragments, have you ever had a person stop their sentence? So yesterday we probably talked about this. They just stop their sentence, they don't complete their full thought, and you're wondering, what are you saying? What just happened? Have you ever had that happen to you? Well, this is most likely a fragment, meaning they didn't complete their thought, they didn't complete the sentence. So there are most common types of fragments. These are the most common types of fragments. Dependent word fragments, meaning they're missing that subject or they're missing a verb. Then you have ing and to fragments. So, ing, what type of words or phrases do we say ing? Remember that little word down here. All right, that's what we call a gerund phrase. So ing words are gerund phrases, and they need more added to them to make them full and complete sentences. And then to fragments. Anyone remember what that was for a to fragment? What type of fragment they are?
Preposition?
Yep, they could be prepositions, and we also call the prepositional phrases, we call those infinitives. So the word to, when they start out a phrase, because of the word to, it makes a preposition, and it makes an infinitive phrase that should never start a sentence without a comma. Added detail fragments. Those are when we have so much added information that we just get overloaded and we don't actually have the full and complete parts of a sentence. And finally, we have the missing subject fragments. Because it's easy to have verbs, because you can give commands, but they're still missing the subject. So we want to make sure all of our sentences move away from fragments. Most of the time, fragments have the reader asking questions, feeling, what are you saying? What's your thought process? Can you spit it out? And that's what fragments will do. They don't have a subject and verb, and most likely without proofreading your work, they will be left in. Computers don't always catch fragments, and so it's one of those things that we need to get you in the habit of, so when it comes college time, you know to be looking for fragments. A few tips. They're dependent words, meaning these words start phrases, they start sentences, and they make them dependent clauses versus a full, complete sentence. So words like who, that, which, or where appear not at the very start, but very close to the start. So when this happens, it's considered a fragment. All right, so when this happens, a fragment is often the result. So thinking about the tips, looking at the fragment, a place where people make cheese. What is the sentence missing?
What about them? Oh wait, what about the place?
Yeah, what about the place? Well, what is the name of a place where people make cheese?
A cheese house.
Yeah, a cheese house, a cheese factory. So thinking about these tips, a place where people make cheese is a cheese factory, or a cheese factory is a place where people make cheese. Either way, we put our subject before, we put our subject after. And then the downtown quarter, that is dirty. What does this sentence have, or what does this sentence need to make it better? Is this a full and complete sentence?
Probably not.
Yeah, it's not. So looking at the downtown quarter, that is dirty. If we remove the word that, it would be correct. Or the downtown quarter, that is dirty, has trains that run through it all the time and they throw trash overboard. You just need to either take away the word that or add more information. Use a comma if a dependent word group comes at the beginning of a sentence. So as you can see here, after going to the mall, I was exhausted. Well, it's a good way to add more detail, add in your adjectives, adverbs, but we need to make sure that they're not the full, complete sentence. So if you've seen sideboard, subordinating conjunctions, these words over here, after, although, as if, as long as soon as though, when, while, where, whenever, whereas, where, over, how, in order that, if. All those are subordinating conjunctions, and most time, if they start a sentence, they need to be a part of a dependent clause, meaning they're not full and complete without extra information added to them. So, incomplete phrases. We looked at to, starts an infinitive phrase or a prepositional phrase, and ing words are gerund phrases. So we need to add to them to make them complete. Dependent clauses. If you hear me throw around the word dependent clause, or if I talk about the sentence formulas D, comma, I, a dependent clause means it's not a full sentence. You've left something out, you're missing something to actually make it correct. And so a D is also known as a fragment. So a dependent clause, it means that a sentence does not have a subject or a verb. And when a dependent clause happens, you'll need to try to figure out what's missing. Most of the time, when we read a sentence, if I said that a sentence does not have a subject or a verb, obviously I'm missing a lot. I just have started the sentence with that, and that's all extra added information. I'm missing both my subject and my verb in that sentence. If I cross off, it means. If I were to go to the bottom, when a dependent clause happens, and I stopped there, how many of you would start to get irritated with me if I just stopped all my sentences halfway in between? Would you feel like you're learning much from me? No, probably not. So I need to make sure that with the dependent clause, I also add an independent clause to it. So finding different ways in sentences to make sure that we have everything. There are a few rules that maybe you've used in elementary or middle school and things that we can use today. So the first thing that you can use are cross out the prepositions and the prepositional phrases. So if you cross out prepositions, does anyone remember the rule or little saying that we could use for prepositions?
Anything a mouse can do or something.
Yep, anywhere a mouse can go, or the bee flew blank bottle. So any word that you could insert into the blank would figure out a preposition. Looking at the sentence here, where it says cross out the prepositions or prepositional phrases, what's my preposition? Yeah, out. So of course, I can cross out the word out and know that everything else that comes after it is part of that prepositional phrase. So obviously cross is my verb, and that sentence would be missing a subject. When it goes through to when you go through sentences and try to figure out what's missing, cross out any prepositions and prepositional phrases. So everything that comes after the preposition is most likely part of the prepositional phrase. Circle infinitives. What word did we just say are used in infinitives? Right. So we're going to circle the word to. Anytime we see to and then the phrase that follows behind it, we're going to circle it. Underline a subject once. And then finally in our sentences, we will underline a verb twice. And this is going to help you figure out what's missing in a sentence or what part of a sentence you might need to help. This is when you come down to instances, you're looking at proofreading, you can't figure it out. So here are a few examples. Running down the street, chasing the dog, the cat which was yellow. Does this sentence make sense? No. Hopefully you're feeling that this is a pretty horrible sentence and you're wondering why I even have it up here. So, running down the street, chasing the dog, the cat which was yellow. Who's doing the chasing?
The cat.
Yeah, the cat. The cat's doing the chasing. So knowing which was yellow, the cat's yellow. But the cat's chasing the dog. And what are the cat and dog doing?
Running down the street.
All right, so they're running down the street. I need to, in a sense, make this correct by changing up everything. So if I were to change this full and complete sentence around, how could I have it stated? Yes?
The yellow cat was chasing the dog down the street.
All right, the yellow cat was chasing the dog down the street. Great. Full and complete sentence, I'm done. So that's one way you could definitely change it. Looking at the second sentence, when dinner arrived, which it was late, was cold. The which it was late, that's an attempt at having a full and complete sentence. But what word is stopping it from being a sentence? Right, which. So which stops it? If, of course, I put when dinner arrived, it was late, I could also put a comma, and then I could add more to the it was cold by saying and it was cold. Or I could say when dinner arrived, it was late and was cold. So I could change it by removing the comma, removing the word which. There are many different ways you can change it to make sure it's full and complete. But the biggest thing to remember is that which doesn't start a full, complete sentence. So just thinking of your subordinated conjunctions. What is a run-on? A run-on happens when there is no adequate sign for breaking or stopping or any part of punctuation. Do any of you have any friends that are such quick talkers that you feel like they'd never come up for a breath of air? Or do you know someone who's a very quick talker? So I see a few head shaking. With a run-on, that's always what you should think of, is that there were no pauses, no breath. So, a few ways to actually make run-ons into full, complete sentences are adding conjunctions, so the for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so, any of our fanboys acronyms, or adding in a semicolon or adding in a period. All of these things are correct to show that, you know what, these sentences, they need to go together instead of being run-ons. I know that this is a little bit before your time period, but have you ever seen the show Blossom? All right, how about the Big Bang Theory? If you know who Amy Farrah Fowler is, she is the character who was actually Blossom. Back in the day, Blossom's best friend, Six, was a talker. She could say so many sentences without ever coming up for a breath of air. It was amazing to see this girl talk. But she would just continue on and on and on. And so like that fast-talking friend, that's what your run-on sentences will do. Most likely they take up line after line without a full, complete period, without a full, complete break, or a comma conjunction. And that's what we'll check your papers for. Most of the time, if you're using Microsoft Word and a squiggly little line comes up beneath your sentence, it's because it's likely to be a run-on. So we're going to check for those. Just like a run-on sentence, we have few sentences. Run-on sentences meaning two or more sentences are put together. A few sentence is usually meant that two sentences are joined. So it's smaller and they're easier to overlook. So thinking this first example, I like to run, he likes to run with me. How can we change this to make it correct? I like to run, he likes to run with me. Nothing? All right, you could make it one full complete sentence. We like to run together.
Did you add and?
All right, so those are your three options. You could put a semicolon, you could put a period and a capital H, or you could put a comma and. All of those would work. The next one, Juliet never knew that Romeo died loving her. She thought he died selfishly. How could I change this sentence to make it correct? All right, beyond a comma, what else do we need? All right, so we need to use a comma and a conjunction. So with the comma conjunction, we need to use for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. What word do we think would fit in best?
So.
All right, where would the comma go?
For her.
All right, so we'd put our comma in after her and then so. And that's one way we could make it correct. Do you think it's important that we knew that he died selfishly before she found out that he died loving her? Could we invert those ideas? If we inverted them, the names would go then before the she, and that's a problem. So we want to make sure, as it is right now, we have the cause and the effect. So those are good information. All right, comma splices. With the last sentence, there was an easy insert of obviously a comma. But looking at it this way, if we just insert a comma, it doesn't tell us that we need to take a long pause or that these are full sentences on either side of the comma. And that's what we call this, a comma splice, meaning the comma was there, but it wasn't used right. So today was my first day of class. I liked it. How could we use this correctly? All right, you put it, today was my first day of class, comma, and I liked it. Anything else we could use? Yes.
I liked my first day of class.
I liked my first day of class. Of course, you could change it and make it all one sentence. So these are comma splices to avoid by just putting in a comma, but making it a comma splice go away by using a comma conjunction or a full complete sentence. So, of course, comma splices. The comma is used because writers see the need to actually put in a break or pause, but they don't use it correctly. Comma splices are the most common type of run-on, meaning you just throw in some commas because you think you're adding a correct pause, but it's not a strong, clear pause. Of course, if I put in a comma, what am I telling you to do as a reader? Any ideas? Yep.
Pause.
I'm telling you to pause, but maybe not long enough, or to tell you I'm done with my thought process. Here are a few warning words for run-on comma splices. I, you, he, she, it, we, they, their, this, that, now, then, and next. So obviously you can see a lot of the T demonstrative words. They, their, this, that, then. They demonstrate something, but most of the time we put a comma before them thinking that it's the place for a pause. So, again, these are a few ways we can correct run-on sentences. Look down on the left. The left-hand part of your screen, the I, CCI. So I know in math you do tons of formulas. In English, we have formulas as well for sentences. And what this sentence, the I, CCI, is showing you is that you need to use an independent clause, so a full sentence, a comma, one of your fanboys, and then another full complete sentence. So that's how we can correct a run-on. And we've been doing that within our examples. So again, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so, your fanboys. Another way to correct run-on sentences, using a semicolon. Does anyone remember what a semicolon is or why we would use a semicolon?
To correct it.
All right, to obviously correct a run-on. With a semicolon, if you look at a semicolon, how it is, it's a period on top with a comma on the bottom. The period on top is telling you this is a full sentence, but I don't want to make it just stand alone. I want the second half to be a part of it. They have a relationship when you use a semicolon. Meaning if someone went back in and peer revised your paper, they couldn't break it apart. So you couldn't have one sentence in one area and one sentence in another. There's some relevancy that they need to be together. So that's why you would use a semicolon. And lastly, a way to correct a run-on is using subordination. So thinking about those words after, although, then, if you use them with a D, comma, I sentence, so meaning your dependent clause goes first and then a comma, you can change these to make these correct sentences. And of course, you can always add a period, make a capital letter after it, and correct it to have a full 2 complete sentences. So, with that being said, I would like you to take a few minutes. I want you to pull out a piece of paper. Try these 10 sentence corrections. Write them down. And you will be turning these in. All right, take one last minute to finish up before we're going to get a chance to discuss. All right, for those of you who are still writing, keep writing. I'm going to flip over to the options that I've given you for corrections. So the sentences are still there. So thinking about sentence number 1, you could have put, a felt tip pen is easy to ruin. Just leave it lying around without its cap. Did someone else put a different answer for number 1? Yeah.
It's easy to ruin a felt tip pen if you leave it laying around without a cap.
All right, making a full complete sentence. So it's easy to ruin a felt tip pen by just leaving it lying around without its cap.
Yeah.
All right, so full complete sentences for number 1. By adding the period and the capital letter, it leaves the second sentence wanting more, so I could definitely see that. Number 2, astigmatism is an eye defect, period. It can be the result of a disease or of an injury. Another good way to fix this sentence.
But, and it can be the result of, or,
So, comma and. Yeah, I definitely think that this one as well could have been a semicolon, because the information relates back to astigmatism and how it's caused, so it's a cause effect. Number 3, last summer, no one swam in the lake. A little boy had dropped his pet piranhas into the water. All I could think of is ouch. Last summer, no one swam in the lake, comma. All right, so instead of the comma, we could put because.
or do you just need, you don't
With-
need a comma because?
With the word because, you do not need a comma. If you're going to use a comma, I would use probably for. Little boy had dropped his pet piranhas into the lake, because it's giving reason. Number 4, a horse's teeth never stop growing. They will eventually grow outside the horse's mouth. I think that's crazy. So we have a period, capital T there. Another way we could do this sentence. All right, comma so. Number 5, Cuba is only 80 miles south of the U.S., period. Capital I, it is one of the few communist countries left in the world. Another way to do this sentence.
I use comma yet.
All right, comma yet. Definitely. It's so close to the U.S., but it's still communist. And 6, ice water is the best remedy for a burn, period. Using butter is like adding fat to a flame. Yes.
I did comma on the other hand.
Comma, I would use and on the other hand, and then a comma. So add one of our conjunctions to it, but that sounds great. So comma and on the other hand, comma, using butter is like adding fat to a flame. Good. 7, cryptography is the science of creating and breaking codes, period, capital I. It was first practiced in ancient Egypt. Yes.
I put cryptography, comma, first practice
All right, so you made this in a positive by saying cryptography, comma, first practiced in ancient Egypt, comma, is the science of creating and breaking codes. Great. And number 8, the Purple Heart is awarded to a member of the military wounded in battle. I would put this, probably for myself, I would actually use a semicolon here. My grandfather has 2 Purple Hearts. That's relevant information and it shouldn't be somewhere else. Of course, other things could be used like comma and or period capital letter. Number 9, lobsters are cannibalistic. This is one reason they are hard to raise in captivity. Yes?
I did the same thing you did, except I used a comma instead of a period.
In front of this?
Yeah.
So then you should do the comma and this is one reason. So using coordinating conjunction would be great. So lobsters are cannibalistic, comma, and this is one reason they are hard to raise in captivity. How many of you knew lobsters were cannibalistic? That's why they have the rubber bands over the claws too, so they can't hurt each other in the tanks. And number 10, last week a student brought a gun to school, period, capital T. The principal has now decided to install metal detectors at the school entrance. So of course, I think this is also a cause effect that you could use a semicolon or many other things. This is the last thing we're going to talk about today, so you want to make sure that you turn this in, put this into the box, get this onto infinity, and have a great day.